What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. My guest today is a best-selling author, motivational speaker, life coach, and a writing coach. She's written such books as The Messiah Within, The Divine Keys, and her latest offering, Feast and Famine, Healing Addiction with Grace. In this episode, Robin touches on the concept that we all appear to be addicted to suffering in one form or another, as well as dropping many other tidbits of wisdom along the way. I truly enjoyed taking the time to have this conversation with her, and I hope you guys enjoy it as well. Please welcome Robin Clare. Robin, welcome to the Jacked Up podcast. It is so good to have you on the show today.
Thank you, John. Glad to be here.
You have a pretty inspiring story. Reading through your bio and going to your website and checking things like that out, I was really amazed at how you went from being someone who suffered, from addictive eating habits and eating disorders and stuff like that to overcoming all that and becoming the person that you are today. So with that being said, why don't you go back in time here a little bit and just give our audience an idea of, what started this whole journey for you, where you were and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah. So if I went really way back, I would go back to when I'm 7 years old and my mom put me on a diet.
Really? At 7 years old?
At 7. And so that actually was so humiliating. I was actually at camp and I would run out of the camp commissary and slam the door every day because everybody else could have desserts and I couldn't. And it not only did it start this moving towards an eating disorder, but it started this pattern of humiliation in my life. And so that became my pattern. We all have emotional patterns that become part of our trauma. And so until I was ready to heal this trauma pattern, this humiliation and embarrassment, what I kept doing is I would overeat and then I would have bulimia, which was a form of self-humiliation. Like I would actually humiliate myself, keeping the humiliators at bay. Because when I went back and looked at my humiliation pattern, I had been humiliated over 20 times publicly in my life. And so I could see the pattern. I actually counted them. And then I realized, wow, I'm still self-humiliating myself. So then when I came into recovery from my eating disorders, I was able to take a look at what was I truly suffering about, because my current book, Feast and Famine, is based on the premise that we're primarily addicted to suffering, and then we choose our secondary addictive substance or situation, vice or substance, to perpetuate the suffering until we're ready to heal it, or maybe even to feel better about the suffering. But until we actually get to the real problem, that I was addicted to suffering, not to food, right? Until I could do that work with a mental health professional, I couldn't get out of the addiction. And then once I was out of the addiction, then I was able to write this book. I wrote it the first time in addiction. And at the end of the book, I'm like, okay, well, I hope all these things work for you because they didn't work for me. All these suggestions and try this, try that, even from, I'm a spiritual author. I write with ascended beings from the spiritual realm, and they gave suggestions, and I'm like, okay, well, it still didn't work for me. So then I put the book down. I didn't publish it until I came into recovery, until I actually almost died from my bulimia. I started bleeding and I had pain all over my body, and I realized, I think I'm going to pop a gasket. I know you're a mechanic. You appreciate that. So that's what I felt like. I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm done. Like I finally hit rock bottom. And then I was able to come into recovery, follow these spiritual teachings, and finish the book. And so I would say to your folks, there's a definite traditional path to healing addiction. But from my research, I have found that most of those paths are trying to heal the symptoms of addiction, which is what you're addicted to as your
Right.
vice or your substance.
Hmm.
What's different about feast and famine is we're saying that you have to heal what you're suffering about. That's
Hmm.
the primary addiction. And
Right.
how do you heal that? And
Hmm.
so the book offers a divine healing path, these spiritual concepts, and of course you must work with a professional if you're going to
Right.
do that deep trauma work. It's
Yes.
not something you can do on your own.
Hmm.
And whatever works for you, a mental health professional or a sophisticated energy healer that can do the inner child work with you.
Yeah.
Whatever
Yep.
works for you, but
Hmm.
you've got to clear the suffering. You've got to surrender the suffering, do the healing, and allow the grace to come into your life so that you can move forward. And the grace will come in however it's intended to, whether
Yeah.
it's people to help you heal or new friends or new ideas. It arrives as
Hmm.
soon as you're in surrender, as soon as you've decided, I am done, truly
Hmm.
done with this vice. I'm done with feeling like crap. I'm
Yeah.
going to be a better person, and I'm going to feel better, and I'm not going to feel sorry for myself anymore.
Yeah.
Then it's
Hmm.
almost like magically resources start coming to you to help you to fulfill this request that you've made when you said I'm done, when you've
Yeah.
surrendered.
Yep.
Mm.
It's all about coming to that point where you're like it's your rock bottom. It's enough's enough. It's time to make a change. Before we go too far, I want to back up and touch on a couple things that you just talked about. First and foremost, you were talking about the childhood experiences that kind of shaped your early
Yes.
adulthood and what was going on. A lot of people do not realize that is incredibly powerful and important when it comes to understanding who you are as an adult. I've recently done a lot of study in the mental health field, and one of the things that I've come across is that a lot of mental health professionals use one simple test. It's called the ACEs test, the Adverse
Mm.
Childhood Experiences Test. When you look at people today that are suffering from eating disorders, being overweight, a number of different emotional, psychological, and physical ailments or issues, most of those people, when they take that test, they score 4 or higher, meaning that they have adverse childhood trauma that needs to be dealt with because it's affecting their life today. And most people don't understand that. And when you get it is so easy to score a 4 on that test. You would be amazed. Things that we don't think about that happened to us when we were kids, we don't think back on them and we don't consider them to be trauma. They actually are, and they can actually affect many aspects of our life years and years later.
I agree with you. And even like at the beginning when I was coming out to speak about this book and sitting there
Mm-hmm.
saying, humiliation, what's the big deal about that? Like
Mm-hmm.
like shut up, Robin. Like almost like
Right.
humiliation. What but humiliation is a form of bullying.
Sure. Sure it is.
Right, right, and
Yep.
bullying is so rampant in our world. Not
Mm-hmm.
We don't even know, and it's funny as a mother of, children in their 20s, I would
Mm-hmm.
say things and I'd be like, "Oh, there's a moment for the therapist couch for them."
Yeah.
Right? Like, we
Mm-hmm.
don't know what that is, right? We don't know
Right.
what someone said or did. What we should know is two things, which I find very interesting that
Mm-hmm.
I've learned in my spiritual path. One, we choose our parents.
Yeah.
Before we even arrive here in the our soul chose our
Mm-hmm.
parents so that we could learn what we needed to do. And so that takes a little bit of the pressure off blaming your parents because you chose them
Mm-hmm.
to help you to learn what you needed to learn in this lifetime. And the second is that they were doing the very best that they could
Mm-hmm.
with their limited knowledge and their limited experience about being a parent.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to cut them some slack. There's
Mm-hmm.
no manual
No.
about being a
No.
parent, right?
Not at all.
Right? You
Not at
learn
all.
that the moment you got to change that first diaper.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, where's the manual? Right?
Yep.
I keep doing
Yeah.
these mechanic references for you. Um, but there's no manual, right? And so
Right.
they're doing the very best they can. Plus, they know at the soul level, they're like, well, we got to put Robin on a diet at 7. Let's get the ball rolling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And so every experience that I experienced led me exactly to where I needed to be to write that book.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's what's
Yep.
happening in all of our lives.
Sure.
Our soul is leading the way. I know this is very
Mm-hmm.
spiritual and this is just who I am. Our
Right.
soul is leading the way until we can have the courage to tell our story.
Mm-hmm.
And then, if we're really courageous, perhaps do something with it,
Yeah.
study it, teach it, do a podcast, write a book,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you're into. So even in my private practice now, I've moved from just traditional life coaching to a combination of life coaching and writing coaching because I want
Okay.
to have help people to have the courage to tell their story because
Yeah.
all of our stories are so unique
Mm-hmm.
and can be so helpful to others if we authentically tell the
Absolutely.
stories,
Absolutely.
right?
That's why I got into podcasting. When I first
Mm-hmm.
started my business, T2 Nutrition and Wellness, my goal is I want to help as many people as possible. So I sat down and I took a long look at situation, and I'm like, okay, well, I have all my certifications, so I could go to work at a gym and I could help people at a gym, but I'm only going to be able to help X amount of people a day, X amount of
Mm-hmm.
days a week, X amount
Mm-hmm.
of weeks a year. I'm going to be limited. So I'm like, okay, well, now we live in a world where you can pick up your cell phone and just say, okay, I'm going to go live on Facebook, and you can literally reach thousands and thousands of people. So I got to thinking, and I was like, okay, I need to do something more. So I got into the Facebook space, and then I started my YouTube channel, and I started making the old talking head videos where I would sit and talk about this is this, and I'd put some B-roll into the video and all that, and it was just so boring. It was so boring for me to make. It was so boring for me to watch. I was like, you know what? This is not the avenue. So at the heart of it all, when all this started, I thought my biggest tool, my biggest ability to help people is to be able to relate to them and share my story. Okay. How I
Mm-hmm.
went from being 405
Yeah.
pounds and almost dying in a diabetic coma
Wow.
to being who I am now. And I'm like, okay, well, then that's the avenue. But realizing that stories, people's experiences are so powerful when they're shared,
So powerful.
I was
Such an
like, I
amazing
need to
teacher.
start a podcast. I need to start a podcast, and I need to reach out and talk to other people from all aspects of life because, you talk about being incredibly spiritual, and I'm all about that because I believe that the overall wellness of a human being is all encompassing. It's everything. It's nutrition, it's exercise,
Mm-hmm.
it's mental health, it's psychological health, it's spiritual, it's everything. That's all pieces of the puzzle. We're like a big Rubik's cube, and if you have one of those
Yes.
little cubes that's missing, we're not complete.
Yeah. And even at the end of A Feast and Famine, when I went through the whole,
Mm-hmm.
divine healing path that was shared with me, I
Mm-hmm.
received a message from Yeshua, who most people know as Jesus. And his message was,
Mm-hmm.
there's something missing from the book, Robin. And I'm
Hmm.
like, all right. I thought I was done.
Yeah. Right.
But I went on a journey to figure out what was missing. And what was missing is this idea of wholeness or
Mm-hmm.
congruence. The idea
Yes.
that we are mind, body, spirit, and emotion. And in order to
Mm-hmm.
stay in long term recovery,
Mm-hmm.
you have to look at your mind, body, spirit, and emotion every day. And in fact, even on my to do list, I have 4 categories: mind, body, spirit, and emotion. What am I
Mm-hmm.
doing for each? Because I'm an integrated system. And once I can do something for all of them, I come into a state of wholeness. And then from that state of wholeness, I can live in congruence with everything that's happening in my life. I can actually walk the walk of the teachings that have inspired me and that I've
Mm-hmm.
shared in my books. And, I was talking to my daughter about that a little bit. We're both using my fitness pal to stay, to monitor our calories
Right.
during COVID-19. But I said
Mm-hmm.
it's a combination. It's like you have to find that sweet spot of how much are you eating, how much exercise, how much water,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
How much are you sleeping, right? As a
Mm-hmm.
nutritionist, and so I'm sure this is what you do
Oh,
with
yes.
your folks, right? It's like,
Absolutely. Yep.
where do you find that wholeness, that congruence? And
Mm-hmm.
once you have all of those pieces in place, then of
Mm-hmm.
course, what happens? The weight comes off safely and
Yep.
consistently, and then you don't gain it back
Exactly. It's sustainable.
until you're out of whack again, right?
Right.
And
Right.
and so yeah, and it's the same thing with recovery, right? You need
Mm-hmm.
to be healing at the mind, the body, the spirit, and the
Mm-hmm.
emotional levels.
Right. Yeah. Now,
Mhm.
your book, the subtitle of your book is "Healing Addiction with Grace," and the main idea behind the book is that our primary addiction is suffering.
Mhm.
What types of suffering have you found? With talking with people and whatnot, what are some of the more common types of suffering that we
Yeah.
seem to be addicted to? Is it just suffering as a whole, or is it certain types for certain individuals?
Well, first I think I would define what is suffering. So
Mm-hmm.
suffering, I've come across two definitions that I like, simple ones. Suffering is when you're wallowing in your pain, right? So
Okay.
pain is inevitable. You're
Mm-hmm.
gonna Pain is like death and taxes.
Yes.
It's happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you have a choice to suffer, and sometimes we don't know that. We don't
Mm-hmm.
really know that. We think that they go together, pain and suffering. In fact,
Right.
probably everyone that's listening thinks it's a saying, right? Pain and
Mm-hmm.
suffering, but it's not. It's two different things. And so,
Right.
and then the other definition of suffering is pain plus resistance to heal equals
Mm-hmm.
suffering. And
Okay.
so I think that's when you and I first started talking, because I'm like, you'd probably
Mm-hmm.
like this resistance word, right?
Yes, absolutely.
As a coach,
Mm-hmm.
and so what are we suffering from? I think we're suffering from anything. We're suffering from unhealed child, teen, and adult trauma,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is specific to you. I think we're suffering from what is we think we're supposed to be doing based upon maybe what our parents told us we were supposed to be doing,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't resonate with us. I think we're suffering, we're hanging in relationships that we shouldn't be. We're staying at jobs that maybe we should have the courage to find something that we would love to do. I think we're
Right.
suffering from overeating. I think we're suffering from too much drinking, and the real addictive substances.
Sure.
Um, and I just think we're suffering so much,
Mm-hmm.
but we never knew that before.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
think it's new to us, this idea of suffering. And
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting. I had a Christian woman say to me, "It's not okay for me to suffer, to even acknowledge I'm suffering, because Jesus died for me on the cross. He
Mm-hmm.
suffered for me." And I'm like, that may be true, but we can still be suffering in this lifetime. So
Sure.
that
Sure.
was I gave her almost permission to look at what is she suffering over,
Yeah.
right? and
Yep.
and and so I think the suffering, it's a tough word, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, it
But it
means many things. That's the way
mhm,
I look at it. It means so many different things. It's like I just had this conversation with my son the other day. He's this year he's got his first job and he's working in retail. He works in the convenience store as a
mhm,
clerk, and you know how people can be. It's like if you don't have the thing that they want, or like in today's world, a lot of these different convenience stores and whatnot, they're only allowing so many people into store at a time and things like that. And it's just like whenever a customer gets displeased and is upset, he has a tendency to take that personally because he's one of those people that
yes,
always wants to please everybody anyway.
mhm,
And I picked him up from work the other day, and I was like, because I could just tell on his face that he'd had a really bad day. So we were talking on the way home, and he was telling me about how he was trying to do his checkout and everything, and I guess they have this automated thing where he puts the bills in the safe. It's all automated, and the bill acceptor wasn't taking the bills, and it's like the point of sale system went down a few times throughout his shift, through no fault of his. It was just something that happens, which these things are, POS stands for something else in my book, but the point of sale system kept going down on him. So he had a really bad day. All these things kept going wrong, but it was nothing that he was doing. And he was so upset and so stressed out. And I was explaining to him on the way home, I'm like, look, it's real simple. My philosophy is I'm not going to be upset, hurt, or let it bother me if something is going on that is out of my control. Because if it's out of my control, there's nothing I can do about it. The only thing I can do is control my reaction to it and control what I'm going to do to move forward. So if it's out of your hands, if there's nothing you can do about it, why suffer over it? You know what I mean? Just let it go, because from a nutrition standpoint, from somebody that's a coach and a trainer and all these other things, people don't understand what stress does chemically to the body.
Oh, yes. Oh,
it is incredibly damaging. Yeah, inflammation, and your metabolism doesn't work right. Elevated stress can actually inhibit digestion. So that means that you're not getting as much of the nutrients from your body or from your food that you should be getting. All these things happen because of our emotional state, which can be influenced by other things, our spiritual state, the whole works. So it's just, everything is so connected, and people just don't get it.
And also, instead of the news hour, they should call it the suffering hour.
Oh, indeed.
Right?
Oh, my goodness.
Because if you watch the news, you'll see that there's maybe at the end, for the last 2 minutes, they'll tell you something good. Oh, look at this cute thing that happened in social media. But for the first 58 hours, for 58 minutes, let's just bombard you with one suffering story after the next.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so we're living in a time with COVID-19 and with everything else, politics, everything. It's hard. It's hard not to be affected by what is going on in our world, because it's actually come back to hit every single one of us. Right?
Indeed.
And so the question is, what are you going to do with this time? Are you going to take this time where maybe you're not as social and work on a project that you wanted to finish in the house, or read more, or are you going to sit there and watch, like my elder parents will watch CNN or something all day. And then by the end of the day, my mom will call me. She goes, I can't stand this anymore. I'm like, well, why don't you just not watch it? Or watch movies, right? There's a lot of great movies on, right? And she's like, no, we have to know what's going on, and I'm like, well, that's why you don't feel good, Mom, because you're absorbing this all day long. I don't even know how these people actually become TV anchors. I don't know how they say all this all the time.
But well, I would imagine they're probably numb. They would have to be. But we live in a world, though, Robin, to be quite honest with you, like, I'm a person, I can't tell you the last time I watched a news program at all on TV. I don't watch TV anyway. It's like I have streaming services. I watch like Hulu and Netflix and stuff like that. I don't have cable where I watch network TV at all. And I don't watch anything online that is news. But even at that, if you are on social media, it's everywhere. It is absolutely everywhere. If you're on Facebook, you can't escape it. If you're on Instagram, you can't escape it. Twitter, it doesn't matter. So even for those people that don't sit in front of the TV like you're saying your parents do, you still can't escape it.
Yeah. And know that it's not your suffering, right? Of course, right? Because if you were really to look at it, John, in the present moment, if you were really present in the present moment, right this second, if every one of your listeners just sat there for 5 seconds and thought about what is going on in their lives, it's actually really quite lovely and perfect, right? In the present moment, everything is typically good. But then you go out and you listen to all this news, or you read Facebook, or you do things, and then what happens? Then you're like, get heart palpitations, and you get
Yeah.
nervous, and the stress
Mm-hmm.
comes up. But in your own life, for the most part, I mean, there are bad things that happen, pain,
Mm-hmm.
right? But for the most part, this moment is pretty darn good,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
and
Exactly.
and that's where you have to stay, is right here in your own life. And of course you can be empathetic and
Mm-hmm.
compassionate for
Sure.
others, but
Mm-hmm.
remember who you are. Remember that most of this fear, fear is the predominant energy on our planet.
Yeah.
And most of the fear, my teachers from India, at the Oneness University, Sri Bhagavan, would say, is it your fear or is it the collective fear? Because most of the
Mm-hmm.
fear you're feeling is coming from the collective energy on the planet,
Right.
not your own. And so if you can stay grounded and balanced inside yourself, keeping your integrated system healthy, your
Mm-hmm.
mind, body, spirit, and emotion,
Yeah.
you can move out of suffering, right? You
Absolutely.
can live a life where you're not suffering. Am I saying bad things won't happen? Of course they will.
Yeah.
But then you become the observer of your life,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you say, oh, that really stinks. What can I do to fix that?
Yeah.
Right? What can
Exactly.
I do? Or nothing. I guess I can't do anything. So I might as well not get upset, just like you were
Yeah.
saying to your son. Right?
Right. Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. So now I got to ask you: Are you familiar with Tony Robbins and any of the work that he's done
Hmm.
over the years?
Yes.
That last statement that you just made brought so many things that he talked about for years to light. It's like you were talking about how fear is the most powerful emotion. But what we need to realize, and this is where I tie in when I'm working with my clients, working with their mindset and their emotions just as much as telling them what to eat and how to exercise. Emotion is created by motion. So if you're
Right.
in an emotional state and you want to change that state, move, change your
Move.
physiology. When you change your physiology, you change your state, you change your
Yes.
emotion. It's like he says, if you focus on being grateful for something, you can't be worried, you can't be fearful because you're focused on
No.
being grateful.
I
Does that
remember
make
him
sense?
saying that.
Yeah,
It does make
exactly.
sense. They
And
can't
it's
live in the same mind,
right. You
right?
can't be in both spaces at the same time. You have to be one or the other. You have to be.
Mhm.
And that's the thing. And that goes right back to what I was telling my son the other day. You can't control this. So do not let it control you. Change your state. Change your
Yeah.
emotions. Do something
So one
different.
thing
Think something
yeah,
different.
one thing, John, one thing I wanted to share about the whole humiliation process, the bullying process, one
Mm-hmm.
of the things that also helped me to get out of that
Yeah.
was to realize, and this is something I learned when writing Feast and Famine, is that no one can bully me or humiliate me unless unless I crown them the judge of my life,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
If I don't
Yep.
allow them to be the judge,
Yeah.
then whatever they say can't impact me,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's
You're
when
right.
I'm saying, oh, he must know something about me, or she must know something about me. I
Mm-hmm.
better take this to heart. But if someone says something to you and they're trying to actually probably not hurt you, but most likely be constructive to help you,
Mm-hmm.
right? But if you're not putting the judge label on them, you could say, thank you very much for your input. I'm going to think about that, and then I'll see what I'm going to do about it, right?
Right.
But as if you label them as judge, you're like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my God, I must really be horrid, right? They
Mm-hmm.
just said that about me. And so I just wanted to share that with your audience, that the way to, because people will say shitty things to you all the time, excuse my
Oh yeah.
language there,
No, you're fine. You're
but
fine. Go right ahead.
okay. But it's how you respond to it, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
how you take in their words. And if you recognize that they're not the judge of you, they're just saying what they're saying, whether they're
Mm-hmm.
talking even about themselves. They may be saying
Right.
something about you, but they're really
Mm-hmm.
talking about themselves. That's one thing to
Right.
realize.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're just trying to help you.
Yeah.
So, when you're in a good space, you'll take those types of words as
Mm-hmm.
constructive criticism
Right.
and good coaching. But if you're not in a good headspace, you're gonna feel bad about it.
Yeah.
So that, I think, is really important for people to not not give anyone else in their lives the title of judge.
Yeah. Yep.
And then they'll
And
be able to hear better what they're saying.
right, right. And to your point, I like to tell people all the time, it doesn't matter whether it's something spiritual, emotional, physical, when it comes down to a lot of these things, like your nutrition habits will only cause you dis-ease being dis-ease. Okay. They'll only cause you that if you give them the power. It's all
Mm-hmm.
about your personal power. Okay. If someone has negative feelings about you and they want to walk around and they want to say things about you and quote unquote bully you, the only way they can bully you is if you let them, if you give them that power. Like you were just saying, you're appointing them the judge, saying that what they're saying about me has an effect on me because they're saying it makes it true. And if you believe that, then you're going to
Mm-hmm.
suffer from it. But if you realize that, if you're having a problem with a coworker at work and you know if you're letting them get under your skin, you're giving them the ability to bother you by handing them a piece of your power, saying, okay, I'm going to let you say what you want to
Yeah.
say and let it affect me. And that's something that you just can't do. A lot of people do it and they suffer from it because of it. You just have to stop doing things like that and say, okay, this person might be saying something about me, or this particular thing that I'm trying to do right now is just not going right. But I'm going to keep working at it. I'm not going to give it the power to let it stress me out. I'm going to stay focused on where I want to be, and I'm not going to give that any more power, any more energy. I'm just going to keep pushing forward. And that's
Yeah. And
something that most people don't realize.
and in that work situation or a personal
Mm-hmm.
relationship, and you have someone coming at you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Instead of reacting, what I try to do is say to them, wow, it sounds like you're really upset. How can I
Mm-hmm.
help you?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
those four words, how can I help you? Maybe that's five words. um, are it just cuts the energy right there because they are upset,
Mm-hmm.
right? Right?
Yep.
And you are acknowledging that they're upset. And then you're
Right.
saying, how can I help you? And they don't really know how you can help them. So it's going to
Mm-hmm.
stop the fight or it's going to stop the attack.
Right.
And because they don't know what to say because they didn't think it through that far. Because if they had
Mm-hmm.
thought it through that far, they would have come to you and been like, hey, I'm really upset about this. Do you think you could do this instead?
Right. Yeah.
Or right? No, they didn't think it that far. But
Yeah.
if you're the one that says, I hear you, I hear that you're upset. How can
Mm-hmm.
I help you? It
Yeah.
it really works like a charm to break that attack mode energy,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and then maybe you can come to resolution with that person much quicker.
Sure. Because in most cases, when somebody comes at you like that, that person's suffering for one reason or
Yes.
another. And
Yes.
what they're doing is they're transferring their suffering onto you. And that's
Mhm.
something you need to recognize, and utilizing a tactic like what you just explained is a great way to redirect that back to the person and maybe cause a little self-introspective moment where they look inside and they say, you know what, okay, I do need help with something. I don't need to be mean to this person. I need to just say, hey, I need some help, can you help me? you know
And normally too in that situation, what they're
hmm
upset about is not what they're telling you they're upset about.
no, it's always
They
something
know
else.
it's never the same.
Always
It's
something else. Yep.
it's always something else, and that opens the door
Uh-huh.
for them to tell you what they're truly upset about.
Sure. Sure.
Mm.
Absolutely. So now we've talked a lot about people need, kind of turning their vision inward and realizing that so many things that um go on throughout our lives can affect us in both
Mhm.
positive and negative ways. With that being said, I like to think of there being, because I'm in the quote unquote fitness space. Obviously, I'm all about physical fitness, but there's also an inner fitness too. How would you
Mm.
describe the concept of inner fitness, and what are some of the things that people can utilize to try to help exercise that inner fitness.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting. Today I saw a quote by Rumi, who is a very famous spiritual poet, and it
Hmm.
said, "Listen to the silence. There's great wisdom in there." Right? Which
Absolutely.
sounds like a contradiction, right? So what
Hmm.
I would really encourage people to do is to go inside of themselves, to really stop thinking, almost like focus their energy on their heart center. Um,
Hmm.
and that can happen not only in meditation or prayer, but that can happen while you're gardening, while
Hmm.
you're washing the dishes. When my kids were little and I needed that time, I would
Right.
start washing the dishes, and then I would ask them, "Does anyone wanna help me?" And everyone would scatter to the hills, and
Hmm.
and I'd be like, "Yes, it worked." And then I'd I'd be, like, washing dishes very slowly with the warm water, kind of,
Uh-huh.
like, really getting into it and having
Hmm.
that time where I could go inside and just check in with myself, not in my head, not in
Right.
those crazy disruptive thoughts, but in
Hmm.
my heart, what is going on with my heart, because this
Hmm.
is where it all begins. I mean, I'm highly recommend um, yoga and meditation because you're
Hmm.
looking at the chakra system, the energy centers, and keeping them open and clear. And that's what I call inner fitness, when your emotions, you have control of your emotions.
Hmm.
You're able to look at other people's uh, ways of behavior and not get caught up in it, but just
Right.
as we talked about previously and just a few minutes ago about
Hmm.
how to manage other people in your life when
Yeah.
you're trying your best to stay grounded and centered and live from that
Hmm.
space in the present moment. And
Yeah.
that to me is inner fitness,
Yeah.
because it starts from within. It's like living from within out.
Hmm.
Right,
Yeah.
and the more you do that, the more shiny you are, the more bright you are, the more
Hmm.
things, miracles you see in nature and, all around you, more synchronistic events. So, the more you can and the more you focus on the inner world, it's like your cup is always full,
Hmm.
and then whatever runneth over, like my cup runneth over, so whatever
Hmm.
runneth over into the saucer is what's left for everybody else, but not
Yeah.
what's in your cup. What's in your
Hmm.
cup is for you.
Yeah.
And the best way
Yep.
to get that is through the proper eating, whatever you do to enjoy life, like to
Hmm.
stay connected to Mother Nature, to get enough sleep, to
Yep.
watch how much news you're ingesting, um,
Hmm.
whatever it takes to connect with people. Like during COVID-19, I have really made a conscious effort to connect with people in my life,
Hmm.
everyone.
Yeah.
Even if I haven't spoken to them in a while, I made the outreach.
Right.
Um, right? Just like even if it's a text, just thinking of you during this time. How are
Hmm.
you doing? Right?
Yeah.
You know how wonderful that feels to get that text from somebody else,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
So
Absolutely.
that's part of inner fitness. Like, what are
Yeah.
you doing for yourself, and how are you serving others?
Well, it's just like I'll use a fitness analogy for this. The abdominal muscles. Everybody, so many people come to me, and it's like on the questionnaire that I give them. One of the things at the very end of I think one of the two questionnaires, ask them what their goals are. You would be amazed. About 70% of the intakes that I get back from people, that particular question is answered by, I want abs. Well, guess what, silly? You have abs. Abs are there. You can't see, you may not be able to see them right now because there's a layer of body fat over them, but you have abs. But now, because you tell people a statement like that, the first thing they think is, well, okay, so I've already got abs, so I don't need to work my abdominal region. I just need to get rid of the body fat and I'll have abs. And it's kind of a double edged sword. Will you be able to see that the abs that you have there? Sure. But your abdominal muscles are part of the whole core structure. Core is a very important term when it comes to the body, the mind, and the spirit.
Mhm.
So you have to exercise your core. If your core is not strong, then the center
Right,
of you is not strong.
right.
And that's the thing that people, you know, when they get into these situations, they just don't make that correlation. And, that's where someone like you, if they're working with you, or a coach that isn't just all
Mhm.
about here's a diet plan, here's a workout plan, yeah, get your work done. I hate those kind of coaches. But anyway, but it's because it's about so much more. If you're trying to help someone, you need to address all those different things.
The
You were
whole
talking,
integrated
yeah,
system.
yeah, and you were talking about the things like meditation and yoga and stuff like that. I like to combine everything. One of my favorite rituals, which unfortunately I still can't do because of COVID right now, even though my gym's open, they haven't opened the sauna. Now,
Mhm.
one of the favorite things that I like to do, and I find it very good for recovery, and I find it extremely good for my mindset, is I don't care how strong the workout was or how long it was or anything else. When the workout is done, I will go in a hot sauna for half an hour. And the whole
Mhm.
time I'm in the sauna, I have earbuds in and I'm listening to things like binaural beats or Indian flute music, things like that, stuff that is very, very calming and very, very meditative. And I'll spend that half hour in the sauna, and then I immediately run and jump in an ice cold shower, because you have the release of heat shock proteins from the sauna, and then you get the cold shock proteins from the cold shower, and
Yeah.
the effect that gives you as far as on recovery and hormone reset and things of that nature is just absolutely amazing. But that whole process that I do at the end of my workout, I've already done the physical stuff. I've done the nutrition stuff because I've ate my meals and I'm watching my nutrition all day long. That sauna and the shower, that's all about me. That's all about an inside reset. That's an inside
Yes.
workout for me. And
Yeah.
it's so important to tie all that stuff together.
Yeah. I totally agree with you.
Yep.
Um, it is, and it sounds like a lot of work, but I believe it's not a lot of work when it becomes part of your lifestyle,
Right. Yeah. And
right?
that's the thing. Yeah. To
It's
be
all that you're committed
successful,
to.
right. To be successful, when you're trying to affect change, positive change, when you're taking these steps to affect this change, it has to be a lifestyle change. So
Mhm.
often and so many times on this podcast, as I've talked with other fitness professionals and whatnot, we've compared our thoughts on something being a diet versus being a nutritional protocol. My view is a diet is something that you start and you stop. Okay. If you teach somebody how nutrients work in the body and you teach somebody how to structure their meals to where they get the best benefit out of the energy that they're putting in their body, that's something that they learn, and it stays with them, and it becomes a lifestyle change. And when lifestyle
Mhm.
change happens, sustainable change happens.
Right, and, it's interesting too, as a writing coach,
Mm-hmm.
the hardest part I have is getting my writers to write.
Really?
It's kinda silly, right? You'd think that they
Mm-hmm.
would want to write, but what happens is they have to make the writing project part of their lifestyle,
Yeah.
because it's a live being, right?
Mm-hmm.
It takes on a life of its own, and they need to own that. They need to
Yeah.
own that they're committed to the process, even if it's 10 minutes a day or a half hour a day, an hour. They just have
Mm-hmm.
to stay with it like they would their exercise or their healthy eating, or
Right.
whatever they're committed to, walking their dog.
Mm-hmm.
It's a live energy, this book. It has a
Sure.
life, and it has a vibration, and you
Mm-hmm.
have to treat it with the respect that it deserves,
Mm-hmm.
or you probably shouldn't be committing to it.
Right, exactly. It's almost like I actually just got your book and I'm just starting to read it. I wish I had read the whole
Mhm.
thing by the time we had to do this, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, there's not that many hours in a day. But it's like I find it really interesting how you tie this correlation in, and we've been talking about it throughout this episode. You tie the correlation into the inner fitness and the outer fitness, and how
Mhm.
our emotional and spiritual suffering are so closely related and affect our physical suffering. I actually heard a study one time where well, it wasn't a study. It was like it was a story I heard about a woman who, for like 20 or 30 years, she had lived under the assumption that, and I don't know how it came about. I don't remember the whole story, but I remember she had this memory that she had been savagely beaten when she was a kid.
Hmm.
Now, come to find out, the actual, like, the visual flashes and stuff that she would have from that had come from a television show or a movie that she had seen.
Mm.
But because there was some emotional trauma that happened, she made that correlation, and it actually created that as a real life experience for her. Even though it had never happened, she suffered some emotional abuse, but there wasn't anything physical. You have to
Yeah.
wonder how the mind makes those connections, how the
Well,
wires and the circuits get crossed in there.
yeah, and don't you think even in your work, John, that the people who are the most successful are also working on their emotional reasons for being out of shape or for being overweight, and the mental reasons, and looking at their beliefs. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yes, you can get thin, and
Sure.
yes, you can get in shape. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
there are millions of people running around who are still suffering but in great shape,
Right.
right?
Yep.
But how long can that last unless they're just fanatical about it, right? Just any moment then they're going to say, "Oh, I really want to get that pizza and eat the whole thing," or
Mm-hmm.
how many, let's
Absolutely.
go for hot fudge sundaes now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
of course you can go for a hot fudge sundae once, but
Sure.
then for people who are suffering and struggling with food addiction, that hot fudge sundae is going to lead to many hot fudge sundaes,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
It's the truth, right? It's
Sure.
like, oh, what can I get away with eating?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in my case, well, I can eat 3 hot fudge sundaes because then I can purge them, right?
Right.
But
Mm-hmm.
but for me to live a healthy lifestyle now, I have to manage all 4 parts, right?
Yeah.
I have to be
Mm-hmm.
constantly aware of what am I thinking about when I'm eating, and what food do I have in the house, and
Mm-hmm.
so the physical aspects of it, and how do I feel today?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Will this food make me feel better than I when I'm done eating it, or will it make me feel worse? Like some
Absolutely.
mindfulness there, right? That's a
Yes.
big one for me. That's a big thing
Mm-hmm.
that I learned in mindfulness, is looking at that food and saying, will I feel better when I'm done, or will
Mm-hmm.
I feel worse? Right?
Right.
Getting on my bike this morning, even though it was hot and humid, I did it
Mm-hmm.
anyway. Right?
Yeah.
All of these things have to work together in order to have
Mm-hmm.
wellness, is really, I think, even in our own ways,
Mm-hmm.
what we're both about in our
Yeah.
private practices and our programming is about ultimate wellness, wholeness, and congruence with all energy.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. When I first started out, it was all about nutrition and exercise. I'll be totally honest, because as far as like my education, that's what I focused on. But what I very quickly realized, and believe it or not, I realized a lot of this by spending time relating my own story to other people, whether it was a client that I was working with, or through being a guest on podcasts and things like that. What I came to realize was that it's so much more. I mean, literally, when my business started, it was just T2 Nutrition, and that's all it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it was
Mm-hmm.
it was totally 100% designed. I built the website and everything from the ground up to be all about coaching for nutrition and exercise. That was it. But within less than a year, my this eye up here, the third eye, started to open up, and it was like, no, this is about so much more. So I
Mm-hmm.
wound up having to pivot and change the business name to T2 Nutrition and Wellness, because it's wellness is everything. We are sentient beings, and we are so much more than just the food we put in the body and the number of the reps we put in the gym.
Yeah, yeah. And when you're not when you're not following a program that works for you, I'm not saying
Mm-hmm.
everybody needs to run to the gym 5 hours a week, but even
Mm-hmm.
if you can't find the energy to walk, you can't find the energy to eat healthy, and you can't find the energy to stop drinking, I think it's time to look at whether you're suffering or not,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Because those things are exhausting.
Hmm.
Suffering is exhausting,
Oh yeah, yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And so if you can't find the energy, if you can't, maybe your job's overwhelming you, if you can't
Hmm.
say, I have a hard stop here at 7 because I need to take a walk,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Or I'm
Hmm.
taking, I know it's hard, and I have I have adult children who are in the workforce, and somehow there's no more lunchtime. I
Hmm.
don't know where that went to, but we used to get
Yeah.
an hour for lunch, right? We'd
Hmm.
eat and then
Oh
we'd go
yeah.
walking, right? I
Yep.
don't know where lunchtime went, and I don't know why corporations can't see the impact that that's having on their employees,
Yeah.
right? Employee wellness. But that's a whole nother topic. We could go
Yeah.
there for another hour, right? Um,
Indeed. Indeed.
right.
But
But
that's all about the bottom line. That's productivity is all that is. The
mhm,
reason that you don't see hour-long lunch breaks anymore is because of productivity. It's like another guy that I follow a lot of his material stuff is Aubrey Marcus. He's an author and he's a podcaster and all this other stuff. And in his book Own the Day, Own Your Life, he talks about how he runs this multi-million-dollar corporation and he encourages everybody that works for him to take a half-hour nap after lunch. And
yes,
he pays them for it. And the
yes,
reason that he does that is because that extra time to just go into yourself and reset and even if you don't take a nap, if you just go sit outside or do something like that, that extra time, what he found was that there was so much more productivity in the second half of the day by doing that than what there was when it was okay, it's 30 minutes for lunch and then get back to work.
yeah, yeah. And even Esther Hicks, The Teachings of Abraham,
Mm-hmm.
right? The Law of
Yes.
Attraction. She always
Mm-hmm.
says that the best way to reset is to take a nap.
Yep.
Right? You
Absolutely.
when you get into like, "Oh god, I can't do this. This is bad. Nothing's gonna happen for me.
Mm-hmm.
What am I doing? Blah, blah." She said, "Close your eyes,
Yep.
reset, take a
Oh
nap,"
yeah.
because when you wake up, you're inspired. The answers are
Mm-hmm.
typically there. It's like, taking a shower too, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
struggling over how to solve something, and what
Yep.
happens in the shower? The answer arrives, right? Because 'Cause you've
Exactly.
reset, and so
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense to me to
Mm-hmm.
take a quick nap in the afternoon.
Indeed. I am the
Um,
master. I am the absolute master of the power nap. I cannot tell you how many times that I've been working all day here in the office and I've had like all right, well, I got done with this. I'm not going to start anything else because in 20 minutes I've got a Zoom call or something like that, or I've got a podcast episode to do or whatnot. And I'd sit here and I get everything ready, and then I'll just sit here and close my eyes. And I've got my
mhm.
headphones on, so as soon as somebody comes on the call, I hear them come on the call and I wake up. But I've actually had times where I didn't, and I had one gentleman in particular. He's like, "You just look so peaceful. I didn't even want to wake you up. I just wanted to say, okay, I'm going to talk to him later and end the call." But it's just, but I do that all the time. I'll probably take 2 or 3 power naps throughout a day
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's nothing for me to run 16 to 20 hours a day. I spend a lot of time in my office working, so it's just a matter of taking those times to reset, let your brain slow down,
Mhm.
and just regain your focus. Okay, well, we're quickly running out of time, so before we
Yeah.
go,
Mhm.
I want you to let everybody know where they can find you if they want to connect with you.
Sure. So my website is clarity.com, CLARE-ITY.com. It's a play on the word clarity and my last name. So CLARE-ITY.com. And on Instagram, it's Clarity by Robin. And on Facebook, it's Clarity with Robin. And I just want to remind you all that I have a 30-minute free discovery call for anyone who for the first time that I connect with them. So take advantage of that. If you want to talk about what's going on in your life, if you want some guidance on the suffering, or if you're thinking about writing a book, I'd love to hear from you. And I
Mm-hmm.
look forward to that.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, Robin, I'm going to let you go. Thank you for so much for taking time out of your schedule to come on the show.
Yes.
This has been an amazing episode. I'm sure that the audience got a lot of value out of it. And if you ever have anything else going on, you write a new book or whatever, and you want to come back on the show, you've got an
Thank
open
you.
invitation anytime.
Great. Awesome. Thank
Uh,
you, John. Nice to
all
meet
right.
you.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to sit tight. I'm going to switch over and wrap this video up, and then I'll be right back.
Hmm.
Okay, folks, you know the deal. I keep trying to bring you amazing guests, and I think so far I'm doing a pretty good job. Robin's an amazing individual. I love her outlook on life and spirituality and all that. So I'm sure you guys got a ton of value out of this. So do me a favor, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the bell. And yeah, I know you got to go up and you got to select the all features so that way you get all the notifications, not just some of them. But hit the bell, like this video, share it with a friend. Hit the Patreon link up in the top right-hand corner. $5 a month helps out, keeps things moving around a little bit. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up. I want to thank everybody for hanging out and watching this video. And until I see you again, you know my motto, playtime's over. It's time to go to work.